Hello, I'm Jeanette Thomas and I'm the CEO and founder of Pellis Care. And today I want to tell you about the development route we are taking to take a topical drug from anecdotal patient data to clinical trial. There is a global market for chronic wounds such as venous leg ulcers and diabetic foot ulcers. There's a huge issue of follow-on care and the consequences of disease, such as the high cost of care, limb amputations, and even death. Clinicians tell us that, assuming the safety and efficacy is demonstrated, they would opt to use a superior topical treatment that targets inflammation, such as our cream. So they would use it as the next treatment after the standard of care has failed. And they would choose this over other adjunctive therapies because it's got a lot of safety data, it's lower cost, and does not require specialist application. Animal studies are not predictive of evidence of efficacy in patients. We have anecdotal evidence from patients with various types of chronic ulcers and don't need to rely on animal study results. A podiatrist has used our cream to treat some of her patients. For example, this is a case report from one female who is a diabetic aged 40. The patient had been treated previously with silver and iodine products, but had no healing. She's also prescribed flucloxacillin antibiotic for 6 months intermittently and still had no healing. So the podiatrist tried our version of our cream, and within 8 weeks, the patient's 2 ulcers both healed. And that meant she did not need to have amputation, and she was too poorly to have amputation with a good outcome. This is a second diabetic foot ulcer patient that the podiatrist treated. He was very poorly. He was currently on chemotherapy and had a non-responsive ulcer. He also had an infection that was not able to be cleared. Treatment with the PCDFU23 cream was used daily and then twice weekly for 12 weeks, and in this time the patient's ulcer healed. The podiatrist treated 3 more patients, all women, 2 middle-aged, 1 elderly, and their chronic ulcers were developed through different means. But in each case, the cream healed all of their wounds within 4, 3, and 6 weeks of treatment. The treatment regime the podiatrist used fitted into a current care pathway. For example, in diabetic foot ulcer patients, the normal standard of care is debridement, then dress with non-adhesive dressings, and wear offloading rocker bottom soles to reduce the weight and pressure, and then repeated retreatments as necessary. So the only difference she had to do for a normal standard of care was to pack the ulcer with our cream level with the skin surface. And in fact, she didn't actually wash this off between treatments. Just every time she redressed the wound, she just repacked the wound with cream. And there were no other medications other than their normal standard of care. Wounds become chronic because they get into a self-perpetuating inflammatory condition. It's a complex disease and there are multiple mechanisms. So healing needs to be reintroduced by kick-starting out of the chronically inflammatory condition, and no one downstream target is likely to work. Fortunately, the active ingredient in our cream has a dual mechanism of action. Firstly, it's an antimicrobial action, and it has activity against a broad range of bacteria, such as gram-positive and gram-negative bacteria, but also some fungi and viruses. It's effective against MRSA, Plasmodium falciparum, and Toxoplasma. It works as an antibacterial or antimicrobial via different pathways. Importantly, the active ingredient in the cream also has anti-inflammatory action and works through the various pathways listed here. You might be surprised and intrigued to know that the active ingredient in our cream is triclosan. Triclosan is a phenol ether and it's a class 3 drug by the FDA, and it's a broad spectrum antimicrobial. It is currently regulated by the Cosmetics Directive, and nobody can use it at a higher concentration than 0.3% in cosmetics or any other materials. It's widely regulated in order to stop the overuse and overexposure into the environment as used to happen. However, it is a small molecule and it's got a suitable pK as a medicine. It's proven to be safe in a regulated environment, and so it provides an excellent opportunity to be used as a medicinal product. Wounds are incredibly complex, and a wide range of molecular and cellular deficiencies are involved in chronic wounds. Our cream provides various factors required to overcome each of these deficiencies. We've performed extensive research on the mechanisms of action of triclosan. We've constructed a network of all the pathways reported on the mechanisms of action of triclosan, and through that detailed mapping of all the mechanisms of action, we've worked out that the key is the downregulation of TLR4. Shown on the left here in red is the cycle of perpetual inflammation that happens in chronic wounds through the activation of TLR4. Downregulation of TLR4 by the action of triclosan transforms the tissue into normal methods of healing, eventually leading to proliferation and maturation of cells and healing of the chronic wound. With the anecdotal data provided by the podiatrist, and with the understanding of the mechanism of action and active ingredient, we want to get this cream to treat patients as soon as possible. In order to do that, we've come up with our development plan. We've looked at the clinical route, the regulatory plan, manufacturing, intellectual property, and the product profile of the target molecule. Regulatory advisors were uncertain whether we would need any further preclinical work before we could get to clinical trial. However, we felt that the drug had been around for a long time, since 1964 when it was first patented. So there's over 50 years of safety data. It's been widely used in cosmetic products, and it was used in Colgate with a claim for gingivitis. So triclosan is one of the most studied drugs. There's a lot of ADME and tox data. So we used references to write the safety section of the IMPD. We presented this to the MHRA, and they agreed with us that the product can go straight into humans in the phase 2A clinical trial without any new preclinical data. The podiatrist used a cream on her patients that was manufactured as a special for her. So we still need to develop a GMP manufacturing process. We need to develop methods in order to do stability testing. We need to select the final excipients that are suitable for a medicinal product. And we need to make the product sterile, stipulated by regulators for open wounds. Then we need to manufacture a clinical trial material. The clinical trial outline has been developed with leading clinicians and regulatory advisors, and it's been presented to the MHRA, who agree with our plans. So the clinical trial outline is shown here. Key is that the trial is for the primary outcome measure is safety and tolerability, but we do have secondary outcome measures of efficacy after 4 weeks of treatment. So we will be able to see whether the cream is causing some healing of chronic wounds. It will also assess the effect of pain and the quality of life. We will measure different strengths of the cream, and we will be placebo control. Here is our development plan. We've got the clinical development plan ready, and we have regulatory compliance to take us to phase 2A clinical trial. Now we need to raise investments that we can perform the manufacturing and the phase 2A clinical trial. The phase 2A clinical trial will tell us the safety of the product, and it will give us preliminary evidence of efficacy. Then we want to do a phase 2B clinical trial, which will read out efficacy after 12 weeks of treatment. After that, we'll then raise more money, or there'll be an exit or acquisition. Further clinical work needs to be 2 phase 3 clinical trials, and then we can apply for marketing authorization. Nobody will invest without patent protection, and we file patents extensively worldwide. And we already have patents granted in GB, Hong Kong and Mexico, and it's being examined in various different countries. The patent covers the use of active ingredient to treat chronic wounds. We're also protected by regulation. There are no products on the market suitable for treatment of chronic wounds that contain triclosan, so there will be no off-label use. So once we get a medicinal license, it will be protected by patent and regulation. We are now looking for GMP manufacturers for sterile topical cream manufacture to GMP. We're looking for a £2.5 million investment so that we can perform our manufacturing and clinical trial plans. And then we will be looking for licensing, perhaps in specific territories by pharmaceutical companies. This is Brian Bennett, the original inventor of the cream. He was a lorry driver, and he developed a cream to treat his wife's eczema. He was also a diabetic, and talking with his podiatrist, they decided that the cream could be formulated and manufactured as a special, and she could use that cream to treat her patients. Every patient she used the cream on that had non-responsive chronic wounds all healed. We were introduced to Brian and the podiatrist, and we really want to get this cream developed in order to get it used by patients to heal their non-responsive chronic wounds. We want to get it tested in a clinical setting under clinical trial conditions and find out if it truly has genuine efficacy to treat chronic wounds. Thank you very much for your attention and your interest in Pellis Care. Please do get in touch if you've got any questions.